I used to think that if you worked hard enough, kept your head down, and did things the right way, you'd get what you deserved. Good grades would lead to great jobs. Kindness would be repaid with opportunity. And people would respect you for your effort. I believed that, right up until the moment Claire Larrington's mother decided my future was worth destroying. It started during the fall semester of my senior year at Ridgewater University. After 3.5 years of burning the candle at both ends, I was finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. I'd done everything right. Summer internships, top grades, campus leadership roles, volunteer work. I'd worked 2 part-time jobs every semester just to stay afloat, sometimes skipping meals so I could afford textbooks or bus fare. But I didn't complain. I had a dream, and I was chasing it with everything. Landing a position at Wellingstone & Rowe, one of the most elite financial consulting firms in the state. They only hired 2 graduates from my entire university each year. But this year, I was a finalist. I'd gone through 3 rounds of interviews already. Nailed the business case study. Connected well with the recruiters. My professors and mentors were backing me. One even told me quietly, "You're the strongest candidate we've put forward in years." And then there was Claire. Claire Larrington came from a different world. Her family lived in a mansion in Crestwood Heights. Her father was a senior partner at a boutique law firm. Her mother, Madeline Larrington, was on the board of at least 5 nonprofits and chaired the Business Women of Ridgewater Alliance. Claire drove a new Audi. I had a secondhand bike with a bent pedal. We'd had a few classes together. She was always friendly, always smiling, the kind of girl who'd compliment your presentation and then take your ideas the next week and pitch them as her own. Harmless on the surface, maybe even charming. But underneath, ruthless. Still, I didn't consider her a real threat. She wasn't known for her work ethic. Most people figured she'd coast into some junior role thanks to her connections. The idea that she'd be picked over me on merit? Unthinkable. But that was before everything fell apart. 2 weeks before my final interview with Wellingstone, I got an email that made my stomach flip. Candidate Conduct Inquiry. Dear Annie, we have recently been made aware of an incident that may reflect upon your candidacy. We'd appreciate a conversation to clarify certain concerns. I stared at the screen for nearly a full minute before the words registered. What incident? I hadn't done anything. I'd skipped the last Wellingstone networking event to finish my capstone project. I called the contact number immediately. The HR coordinator on the line sounded polite, but cold. Professional. She mentioned reports of me being visibly intoxicated and making inappropriate comments about Wellingstone staff at a recent function. There were even alleged photos, though they hadn't yet been verified. I was stunned, speechless. I tried to explain that I hadn't even been there. I asked for details, anything I could use to defend myself. They just thanked me for my time and said they'd be reevaluating my application. When I hung up, I remember just sitting there, staring at my reflection in the dark laptop screen. It felt like the floor had disappeared under me. The rest of the week was a blur. My interview was rescheduled pending review. Professors who had previously championed me suddenly seemed hesitant, distant. My mentor stopped replying to emails. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking around in someone else's nightmare. And then, the final blow. I got the call on a rainy Thursday afternoon. We regret to inform you, I don't remember the rest. My ears were ringing too loud to hear it. I hung up and sat on the edge of my bed for over an hour, motionless. The only sound was the soft patter of rain against the window and the slow, heavy rhythm of my own breathing. It didn't make sense. I had done everything right. I had earned it. How could it all disappear overnight? I tried to move on. For the next few weeks, I woke up every day hoping that somehow it had all been a bad dream. That Wellingstone would call back, say it was a mistake, that someone would clear my name. But nothing came. No calls, no emails, just silence and shame. My parents were crushed. My dad, usually so calm, got angry for the first time in years. "They can't do this to you. You've worked too hard." My mom cried quietly in the kitchen, thinking I couldn't hear her. I told them I'd figure it out, that I had other options, other firms I could apply to. I lied, because the truth was, after the Wellingstone scandal, doors began closing. Quietly, subtly, the kind of silence that doesn't come with rejection letters, just no responses at all. I was tainted, blacklisted, and I didn't even know why. Until one night, after a late class, I ran into James. James was a fellow business student, smart, kind, and more importantly, he had interned at Wellingstone the previous summer. We hadn't talked much recently, but that night, he looked uncomfortable when he saw me, almost guilty. He pulled me aside. "Hey, I probably shouldn't say this, but I thought you deserved to know. Someone at Wellingstone leaked the internal investigation details." "Investigation?" I asked. "You mean the drinking accusation?" He nodded. "But there was more. Photos, emails, stuff that made it look pretty bad." "I never did any of that," I said. "There were no photos. I wasn't even there." James hesitated, then added, "Yeah, well, someone figured that out, eventually. Apparently the photos were fake. Like, obviously fake. But by the time they looked deeper, decisions had already been made." My mouth went dry. "Do you know where they came from?" I asked. He looked over his shoulder. Then he said a name that made my blood run cold. The IP address used to send the emails was traced back to an account called Larrington Advocacy. Claire's mom. I stood frozen in the parking lot long after James left. My mind spinning. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't office politics. This was sabotage. Intentional, calculated, malicious. A grown woman, a board member, a leader in the community, had gone out of her way to destroy a student's future just so her daughter could get ahead. I walked home in a daze. My body moved, but my brain was somewhere else entirely. Something broke inside me that night, but not in the way you'd expect. Not grief, not rage. Something colder, sharper, resolve. I couldn't undo what had been done, but I could make damn sure they paid for it. The next morning, I started making lists. Everything I knew about Claire, everything I suspected about her mother. Their connections, their blind spots, their vulnerabilities. It became an obsession. While working a temp job filing records in a basement, I used my lunch breaks to study public records, scan social media, and cross-reference LinkedIn updates. Claire had accepted the Wellingstone position. She was proudly documenting her rise, posting about making partners someday and manifesting greatness. One post caught my eye. A picture of a whiteboard from an internal strategy session, complete with client names, revenue numbers, and expansion plans. The caption, "Just another exciting Monday with the best team ever. #hustle culture, #confidential who?" I stared at it. She had no idea. No idea that what she was posting violated half a dozen company policies. No idea that a first-year associate wasn't even allowed to be in those meetings, let alone publish sensitive data. She thought she was untouchable. That's when I realized she was already destroying herself. All I had to do was hand the match to the right people. My dossier grew by the week. At first, it was just screenshots of Claire's Instagram posts. Then it was LinkedIn updates, internal meeting leaks, Slack screenshots shared by her coworkers. People love to gossip when you ask the right way, especially in finance, where trust is paper thin and resentment is currency. I found a thread on a private forum where junior analysts from top firms vent anonymously. One post caught my attention. New intern at W&R posting client deliverables on IG stories. Who does that? It was Claire. No doubt in my mind. Meanwhile, I dug into her mother's life. Mrs. Larrington, as it turned out, was even more tangled in hypocrisy than I thought. She sat on ethics committees, gave talks about female empowerment, ran mentorship groups for disadvantaged students. The irony made me physically ill. One night, while researching her nonprofit's financial filings, I noticed something strange. A grant of $40,000 issued to a community startup, the same one where Claire had supposedly interned the summer before Wellingstone. But that startup didn't exist, at least not legally. The domain had been registered 2 weeks before the grant and taken offline 2 months after. It was fake, which meant Claire's internship was too a fabrication, most likely orchestrated by her mother to pad her resume. This wasn't just favoritism anymore. It was fraud. Now I had everything. Claire was leaking confidential client data, inflating her job role, and faking professional credentials. Mrs. Larrington was involved in falsifying nonprofit activities and may have used charity funds to buy her daughter's internship. Both had conspired to destroy my academic and professional future. I could have exposed them quietly, emailed Wellingstone's compliance team, submitted a university complaint. But that would have been too easy. They hadn't just stolen my opportunity. They humiliated me, shattered my reputation. They made my mother cry. They deserved worse. So I waited for the perfect stage, and fate, in its twisted poetry, handed it to me wrapped in gold and velvet. Ridgewater's annual Business Leaders Gala, an event drenched in money, status, and cameras, where top alumni, donors, and executives gathered to toast the next generation. Wellingstone's leadership team would be there. So would the press. And this year's honoree? None other than Madeline Larrington, for her service to youth empowerment and ethical leadership. I nearly laughed when I saw the announcement. It was too perfect. I volunteered for the event under a pseudonym, working logistics through my temp agency. That gave me backstage access, seating arrangements, schedules, catering routes, even presentation decks. I prepared 3 evidence packets for Wellingstone's managing director, complete with dates, screenshots, and policy breaches. For the Chancellor of Ridgewater, documenting academic sabotage and misuse of influence. For a local journalist who had previously investigated university scandals and had a personal grudge against cover-ups. Each packet was bound in black folders with white embossed labels. Clean, professional, damning. I walked into the ballroom on the night of the gala, wearing a plain black catering uniform. Nobody looked twice at me. Claire floated in wearing silver heels and a gown I couldn't even afford to dream about. Mrs. Larrington beamed like royalty. I watched from the side of the room as speeches began. Donors clapped. Flutes clinked. Cameras flashed. Then I moved. 1 folder to the VIP table's head. 1 to the Chancellor's assistant. 1 slid across a white tablecloth to the journalist sitting quietly with a recorder. And then I stepped back into the shadows and waited. The gala glittered under chandeliers so bright it almost hurt to look up. Waiters floated through the crowd with glasses of champagne. Someone played a grand piano near the floral arch that framed the stage. And there they were. Claire, laughing too loudly at a joke that wasn't funny. Mrs. Larrington, posing for staged photos with Ridgewater's Chancellor and the Wellingstone delegation. I stayed near the side door, one of many faceless staff in pressed black, refilling shrimp trays and clearing empty glasses. But I wasn't here to serve drinks. I was here to end bloodlines. The journalist opened his packet first. I watched from 20 feet away as he flipped the folder open, eyes scanning fast, fingers flying to unlock his phone. He looked up and locked eyes with Claire across the room. Next, the Chancellor's assistant peeled back the folder labeled Confidential, Ethics Review. Her hand went to her mouth. She leaned over and whispered something urgent to the Chancellor. The final detonation came when Wellingstone's managing director picked up the black folder from his place setting. He opened it slowly, read the summary memo, then turned to stare at Mrs. Larrington like he had just been served poison in a wine glass. Claire never saw it coming. She was mid-conversation with a local TV host when two Wellingstone compliance officers approached her. One asked her to step outside, for a quick word. The other discreetly pulled her badge and guest pass. The reporter didn't miss a beat. He snapped a photo and tweeted it. Within 10 minutes, the hashtag #Wellingstone scandal was trending in the Ridgewater business community. The chancellor stood and muttered something into the mic. The live feed cut. Mrs. Larrington's acceptance speech was canceled. The award? Quietly pulled from the table. In the following days, the fallout unraveled fast and loud. Claire's internship was terminated with cause. An internal investigation confirmed her fabricated internship experience and confidentiality violations. Wellingstone released a public statement denouncing the breach. Ridgewater launched an emergency review of its academic integrity protocols. But the real knockout came from the local paper. Front page. Mother's manipulation. Daughter's demise. Ridgewater scandal rocks elite circles. The journalist had gone deep. He exposed the fake nonprofit internship, the backdated grant, the shady manipulation of university records, the sabotage trail leading back to Larrington advocacy. It was everything. All of it. In print. With quotes. With sources. Mrs. Larrington resigned from every board she sat on. Claire deactivated all social media within a day. The family's law firm, previously managed by her husband, hemorrhaged clients until it folded. Publicly? They vanished. And me? I didn't say a word. No, I told you so. No announcement, no confession. I stayed exactly where I'd been when they tried to ruin me, in the background, underestimated, invisible. Only now, I had power. The news cycle eventually moved on. As scandals do. New controversies took over. New faces replaced the disgraced. But the name Larrington stayed radioactive. Claire never returned to Ridgewater. She never finished her degree. A few months later, a recruiter friend forwarded me her updated resume, sent blindly to dozens of firms. The lies were gone. The polish stripped away. It was the CV of someone begging for a second chance, and not getting it. I didn't feel satisfaction. Not exactly. I felt quiet, like something that had been clenching in my chest for years had finally exhaled. I finished school, not with fanfare or applause, but on my own terms. My professors, once wary, became warm again. One of them, the same who doubted me during the scandal, pulled me aside at graduation. I misjudged you, he said simply. I'm sorry. I didn't smile. I just nodded. I was beyond the need for validation. The firm I joined, a small but mighty outfit called Hensley Consulting, didn't care about prestige. They cared about results, integrity. I worked harder than I ever had, learned fast, grew faster. 2 years later, I lead a team of analysts. I mentor interns from backgrounds like mine, hungry, humble, and underestimated. Sometimes I pass by the towering Wellingstone building on my commute. It gleams like a monument to everything I used to think mattered. And I smile, because now I know better. My parents visited last fall. We sat on the balcony of my new apartment, 3 stories up, overlooking a park. My dad grilled ribs on a tiny propane burner. My mom poured lemonade into actual glasses, not plastic ones. They didn't say much about the past. They didn't need to. My mother glanced at the framed offer letter on my desk, then said softly, "You did it." And I did. Not because someone handed it to me, not because I cheated or clawed or lied. I did it because I never let them keep me down. Because I knew that what they took from me wasn't the end, it was the beginning. As for Claire and her mother, last I heard they moved across the country, trying to start over. Claire works at a tiny logistics firm under a different name. Her mother consults for low-tier nonprofits that don't ask too many questions. But the ghost of who they used to be follows them everywhere. Because once you become a cautionary tale, you don't get to rewrite the ending. And me? I still believe in hard work. I still believe in doing what's right. But now I believe in something else too. Sometimes the garden grows best in the ashes. And if someone tries to bury you alive, make sure when you rise, you burn their whole kingdom down behind you